Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Equine Episode Examination. I believe it's episode 71 now, where we're going to be discussing Castlemania Season 4 episode here on our episode Flashback series. So, getting into the main meat of Season 4 here, which is pretty much the final season we got to talk about that we haven't talked about here yet. So if you're new to this whole deal here, I feel like I'm hearing myself somewhere else. Nope, I'm not. Okay, good. So if you're new to the whole deal here on Equine Episode Examination, pretty much we're just going to go back and revisit an episode. Normally we talk about a new episode, but since we're in hiatus, we're going back and revisiting an old episode of Season 4, and we're going to discuss it, give our opinions on it, what we thought about the episode, starting with really broad subjects and working our way down into more specific aspects of the episode as we go along. So I'm Rain Shadow, and I'm joined by a few people here in the call that are going to be discussing this along with us.
This is Jay Smith.
I'm from beyond the grave.
I was gonna say there's a bunch of ghosts apparently here with me, which is super spoopy.
Well, given the choice of this episode, it's probably appropriate.
All I can think of is the Applejack woo from Look Before You Sleep. So you know,
which was also in this episode too.
well, yeah, but it's not quite the same animation. It's similar though.
Really, I'm pretty sure it was the exact same animation.
No, it is different. I did actually watch the episode before we.
Matt is a ooh animation expert. He knows the subtle nuances of differences.
Hey, I had to sit through about 20-30 minutes of Sega Saturn cutscenes yesterday. I know scary shit when I see it.
Oh gosh, Mr. Ben, you there? I know he's in the call.
Yeah, I'm here.
There he is. Okay, I guess I hadn't heard you yet.
I'm about to say I must have had my mic muted again when I introduced myself.
Normal stuff here. Par for the course.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh gosh.
I mean, we're talking about the guy who never rewatches the episode before we discuss it anyway, so you know that shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone anymore.
I might have to. Gosh, I might have to restart the stream here real quick. It's lagging quite a bit, which is interesting. So usually I don't have that kind of problem. Give me 1 second here. Okay. Can you hear me okay on the call? Okay?
So, yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Good.
Yep.
Let me wait for the stream to catch back up. Hopefully this will, because it was telling me the quality was bad, which can't be good.
Perhaps it was the stream just reviewing the episode.
Last time I had to restart a stream on YouTube here, it did keep the stream in one video. So hopefully you aren't just seeing this as the first thing. And if you are, hi, we just introduced ourselves. That's all you've missed. We should be back now at least. So we can continue. So today the episode we are reviewing is Castlemania, the third episode of Season 4 of My Little Pony. What are everyone's initial thoughts on Castlemania with a dash?
Has absolutely nothing to do with the Konami game. 0 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm still just kind of like how Dragon Quest from Season 2 didn't feature any slimes of any sort. I'm really upset we didn't at least see a Medusa head as a reference.
Then again, could you imagine what Konami would have done had they have done such a thing? Cease and desist on that would have been faster than me running down to a hot dog stand.
Are you implying Konami cares about their games?
They care about their IP and keep it and hoarding money.
I can understand people being disappointed, but anyone who legitimately did not like the episode simply because it didn't have anything to do with Castlevania needs to need to change your expectations.
I'll be more serious about the episode. There are tiny portions of characterization that I find a bit iffy, but overall I find it a pretty damn enjoyable episode. It's pretty much Scooby-Doo the My Little Pony episode, pretty much. With so there's some interesting continuity from the first two-parter, where we obviously have Twilight trying to find out more information about the magical chest. What's in the box? What's in the box? What's in the box? What's in the box? And so we have Twilight basically researching that and basically exhausting all her stuff in Ponyville and going to the castle of the two Pony Sisters to basically extend her research. And I like that. I like the continuity. I think it's really great that they do that.
I think
overall it could have been worse. I mean, they could have wound up going to the moon or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of just a fun episode. It wasn't much very meaty in terms of character development or anything story-wise.
Oh, there is an interesting point I want to raise at some point about one of the characters. There is an interesting point I want to raise, but it's for later.
Yeah. So, but I mean, so it isn't like anything big in terms of what happens in the episode, but it was still pretty enjoyable episode, just as as a standalone, following that sort of like Scooby-Doo-esque or any sort of like ghost mystery thing where where everyone kind of gets split up, and it did that well. So I found it to be, at the very least, it was an enjoyable episode to watch. And even though it didn't have a lot going for in terms of its importance in anything, it did actually have a lot of still important stuff to the season in it as well. So kind of it did and it didn't at the same time. So we can go ahead and we can move on to the story and the writing of the episode. So I guess start off with a little background. This episode is the first episode that was written by Josh Haber, who of course went on to story edit this past season 6 of the show, and wrote a lot of episodes both this season and season 5 as well. So this is his first foray into the show here, the first regular episode of season 4.
I think if you sort of look at this episode, you wouldn't think to yourself, Josh Haber is someone that's going to stand out and be someone that ends up being a story editor for the show. That's not a slight against him or what he eventually goes on to do for the show. I think what it is just, it just feels very much like a first episode for this show. There's sort of a feeling that you get when I mean there is some exceptions, like Maud Pie comes to mind as sort of like a first episode written that sort of really stands out, but normally they end up being sort of fairly middle of the road. Don't try and push too hard, but I mean it is interesting that they do. I mean season 4 out of all the seasons probably has the most continuity from one episode to the next than most other seasons, but I think that was a conscious decision by Megan for this season in particular. So I can't really say that's necessarily something they forced on Josh specifically, just to him. But yeah, I think the most important thing he seems to nail down pretty damn quickly is that the characters of the show, the main 6 characters, he pretty much gets pretty much spot on sort of to start with very well.
I will say I slightly disagree that you wouldn't expect him to become story editor from this. I mean, I agree that this episode sort of plays it safe with it. It's definitely kind of getting a feel for the characters and him showing that he understands the characters mostly and sort of using the current characterization of the characters to the episode's strength. But I will say that it kind of this episode does show early signs of sort of Haber's role in future episodes. and of course Haber's role in terms of eventually becoming the story editor of the show for season 6. This episode plays a lot into the season arc, even though it's fairly standalone in a lot of other ways. It does play into the season arc a lot of ways. We start off right away at the beginning with the whole reason this episode is even set up, the whole reason they're even going to this castle to have this crazy, antics and adventure and slapstick and stuff, is because Twilight is looking for answers to what the box is, and Celestia sends her to the old again using continuity to the old castle, which we've never really explored before, because it might have some old books that could help her find out more information about what the box is. So again, kind of using the show continuity, continuing the episode from continuing what the plot from the first 2 episodes of the season from the 2-parter. And also, this also leads directly into a lot of the other aspects of the season, not just the box, but this episode also introduces the journal of the two sisters, the Celestia and Luna's journal, and that kind of inspires the main 6 to create their own journal, and that's kind of, we see that carried throughout the season, and as well as, of course, that becomes very important in the finale and all of the key episodes as well. So you kind of get a little sense of that. Obviously Megan McCarthy is story editing this season, and of course she's going to have a big hand in a lot of this. But giving Josh Haber and having Josh Haber write an episode that's so key in terms of what happened in the previous episode and what's going to be happening all season kind of sets up him to get some experience in terms of becoming story editor in season 6. Yeah, I think that was one of my favorite things about the episode, is just getting to see the castle again and seeing it more close up and kind of getting some more backstory on Celestia and Luna and where they lived. It's even more important being that, again, in the previous episode, in the 2-parter, we saw the flashback where the castle gets destroyed, where Luna becomes Nightmare Moon and Celestia sends her to the moon, and then the whole castle gets destroyed. So we see all the events leading up to the castle's current state now in the previous episode. So it was nice kind of directly following that episode up with an episode that takes place in the castle in current day. And I really think Haber did a really good job in terms of balancing all the stories in here, because it gets really hectic really fast. We sort of start out with 3 different stories. We start with one story with Twilight going to the castle, which kind of goes into 3 different stories as Rarity and Fluttershy and Applejack and Rainbow Dash both come in, and pretty much they all remain completely separate, more or less, throughout the entire episode until they all come together in the episode's climax. And even before that, they even split off even more, with each of those 2 separate groups of the other 4 main 6, minus Twilight, splitting up into their own individuals for a little bit, and during the 3rd act, maybe it was the end of the 2nd act of the episode. Again, so having to cut between all of these different characters doing different things, again leading to that sort of Scooby-Doo or other kind of mystery, ghost mystery thing where groups get split up. And I think it was really handled well by Haber in this episode, keeping all the stories balanced, and most importantly, giving them all the right amount of time and flowing into each scene. So a lot of times you'll see one scene affects the next scene or plays off the scene before it. There's a nice flow and nice pacing between all of these scenes, even though we're juggling by the end so many different story threads. None of them are giving too little time, none of them are giving too much time, and the pacing feels really good for all that story juggling.
Yeah, I'd say I think the only thing that you could perhaps criticize in terms of the pairings is that they are pretty predictable could it be the word? I mean, we've seen Fluttershy with Rarity quite a few times. We've seen obviously Applejack and Rainbow Dash having their competitiveness. I mean, it's sort of affirming rather than necessarily enlightening in that regard. But it's done sort of so well that you kind of don't care too much.
Yeah, I mean, Applejack and Rainbow Dash I'll definitely agree on. For Fluttershy and Rarity, I mean, we have seen them before in the series. But I guess
green
kind of
is, green is not your color is probably the main one.
But them just kind of hanging out and and helping each other out. It was something that was nice to see. I do think that for the context of this episode, in terms of how they got the characters to the castle, the pairings made sense at the very least. It wasn't like it didn't seem forced. It made sense that Applejack and Rainbow Dash are competing, so they want to go to the scary castle, and then Rarity and Flutter. The pairings at least made sense, even if we've seen Rainbow Dash and Applejack together a bajillion times.
I mean, basically you had Applejack and Rainbow Dash basically competing. You had Rarity and Fluttershy begrudgingly helping out, and then you have obviously Spike and Twilight, obviously, and then you have Pinky being Pinky.
Yeah, they kind of got her out of the way for this episode. It was not.
She was busy bell ringing.
God.
With her head, no less.
With her head, of course. I think the reveal was probably obvious to most people in terms of it's going to be Pinky, but it still kind of felt satisfying to me, at least. Just it was kind of built up at just the right way.
Pinky is one of those characters that will just say, do something, she'll just go headlong into it. She's probably the only person that can get high Gamergate scores on Microsoft Kinect games.
Yeah, I mean, this episode does play it safe, but I mean, at the same time, I can definitely agree it plays it safe in a lot of ways, but in a lot of other ways, it does take a little bit different approach in terms of what episodes we've seen. A lot of episodes we've seen before. Again, with all of the different story threads, it's something that I don't really think many episodes before this one tackled like that, where we have kind of cutting between multiple characters back and forth, then but cutting between 5 different characters and all their different side stories. Usually episodes will focus on a character or a couple characters and remain focused on them and not kind of split the story up. It's something that's more along the lines of PPOV in terms of it's kind of weaving, not exactly the same, but in terms of weaving a lot of different stories together like that.
Well, I suppose the biggest example of that would be the Cutie Mark Chronicles.
Yeah, that would be probably the only other time we had that. And even then, it wasn't a bunch of stuff happening simultaneously either. It was just them.
Well, some of it was. I mean, Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash's stories kind of intersected a bit.
Yeah, but I mean, everything.
Yeah, overall, yeah.
What I was going for is, I mean, that episode was just them going to each character and then experiencing a flashback in them with. Really, yeah, like you said, the only overlap being there. But here, all those stories are happening at exactly the same time and affecting one another as well. And this has come some of my favorite moments in the episode is when the groups kind of bump into each other and kind of scare, unknowingly scare each other and stuff. They were able to keep them to get apart pretty believably. I'm going to totally agree with what Mr. Ben posted in chat there. I felt the exact same way. I thought that's where they were going with this episode in this season, because it definitely, we knew this was going to be kind of an overarching story plot season from the beginning because of the box, but we didn't know exactly how much continuity this season was going to have between episodes. Is there going to be one big long continuity spree, or just spaced out more like it wound up being? And when we have this episode following up on the first episode pretty much directly for it. You kind of think, oh man, is this kind of, what are they setting up for here in this episode? Is this episode setting up anything more? And it does set up a lot, but one of the things I was thinking of when watching this episode was, right, they're really focusing on this castle. We're going back to this old castle. Twilight's a princess now. Well, she needs a castle, doesn't she? Well, maybe they're going to, and Rarity's talking about fixing up the castle and stuff. Well, maybe that's what we're going to be focusing this season. Maybe we'll have a couple episodes where they're going to be going back to the castle and fixing it up, and by the end of the season, Twilight's going to move into this, into the old castle, which made sense, and we just never really went back there again. So I definitely was expecting that as well, and that didn't really come to fruition. Obviously, we know how the season ended.
No, and that was the thing that it was kind of funny though, because I was joking around pretty much almost right at the beginning that, hey, Twilight's gonna move into this castle, she's gonna get her castle of her own, and in a roundabout way she did, so my prediction came true, just not in the way I expected it. So.
She's a princess, she has to have a castle. We have to have a toy to sell.
It took an entire season for her to get it, though.
Just going a little bit back to the writing, this is also a little bit on characterization as well, but I'd like to point out that this is probably the first instance that we see Fluttershy have a bit of snark about her, because when Rarity is explaining to Fluttershy why she wants to go to the castle, because obviously Fluttershy quite understandably doesn't want to really go to either Everfree Forest, because, well, we know all about the Everfree Forest, and B, Fluttershy is probably the last pony that would want to go to a big, scary, dilapidated castle, unless there's a very good reason. And Rarity doesn't exactly exacerbate a very good reason, and Fluttershy is not actually shy to actually, really say that. Mm-hmm. I found that hilarious. And I love that they actually kept that part of Fluttershy where she's now she's got a bit more of a backbone, and she actually, she's not always, quite so shy, at least around her friends. She does actually seem to have a little bit of Applejack robbed off her by actually sort of speaking her mind and, pretty much saying the truth, because, it's not exactly a particularly important reason why Rarity was going, to be honest.
Yeah, I have to admit, one of the best things I love about Fluttershy anymore is that she will not. If she can get away with it, the writers will have her be even not just snarky, but even sassy to a particular extent. And it's rare, but those glimpses that when she is, it just makes it all the sweeter.
Just wish she was more sassy towards Angel, but there you go.
Of course, this episode also set up the eventual Journal of the Two Pony Sisters book, which came out as well. So a lot of the stuff that was kind of covered in this episode appears in that book, and as well as a lot of other stuff and a lot of other backstory, of course, which was written by Amy Keating Rogers.
Not only that, but in regards to the writing, this was also the first instance, arguably, that we've seen of the actual main villain of the particular season. Even though he didn't make his official appearance until the actual end, the Pony of Shadows that we saw, assuming that it's not some sort of other entity of itself that was leftover nightmare magic, the Pony of Shadows that we saw at the end was none other than T-Rex, who would come to be the villain of the finale of season 4.
Yeah, I had that listed to discuss under characters here, and I'm not really sure. I mean, I personally think it was, and like to think it was T-Rex, that kind of a really weak T-Rex that was kind of exploring stuff and getting ready to kind of come back in the finale, but it's kind of been dismissed as not T-Rex officially a couple of times. So maybe. I mean, my fan is like to think it's T-Rex, but it could have. I think maybe it was just kind of a joke, at the end. Yeah. Oh, look, just like like you would have in Scooby-Doo or some other of these shows sometimes where it cuts back and it was really real.
And it's what was that one episode, or was it still season 4, where we saw that little joke thing for a couple of frames, but it was the one with the Apple family, where Pinky was coming in with the Apple family. It was visiting cousin Goldie or something like that. But at the very end of the episode, you saw for just a couple of frames what was essentially a pony version of Slender Man.
Yeah, they had that kind of hidden in the back.
So what you're basically saying is that T-Rex was not T-Rex at all. It was just Scorpan in a mask.
That's a possibility.
Now that's a character I would love to see in the future.
Oh, I'm absolutely certain that he is going to appear at some point. I mean, they're not going to throw away mention him like they did in T-Rex backstory and not use him at some point. They would be crazy to not do so.
I don't know. It's been a couple seasons now. maybe he'll come back in the movie.
I think the movie. I don't want to go into speculation for the movie. I personally think it's going to be a new villain, but you know.
Well, Scorpan wouldn't be a villain. He was an ally of the ponies.
Which is actually different to the G1 interpretation of Scorpan, because he was essentially T-Rex right-hand man.
Well, I think that's what it was. That was what it was in this too, but he kind of turned and actually wound up liking the ponies. Yeah.
He ends up being a traitor to T-Rex, or at least from T-Rex perspective.
Yeah.
It was Starlight spying on Twilight a whole season early.
Yeah. I really did like how this episode also wound up providing a lot of sort of semi backstory to Celestia and Luna as well, and kind of how they were and what they did before Luna turned into Nightmare Moon, just like the season opener did when we saw the flashbacks to them fighting Discord and finding the Tree of Harmony, which I guess is under the castle, which judging by because we saw the castle in the premiere, right? Because it was in a cave under the castle. But and just kind of and really funny things like, you know, and you find more about this in the book as well. But you know, all the traps and stuff were stuff that Luna had put together because she really liked traps and stuff like and like the organ and stuff were all kind of Luna's doing.
I know this is not completely related to the episode, but I mean, obviously it's sort of, you know, it's set in the Everfree Forest, but sort of slightly related to the previous episodes as well. Is it the Everfree Forest is known for being quite unruly and, you know, not tamely. It has its own weather system. It's not as in control as other places in Equestria. It's quite, you could call, chaotic. Now, my kind of belief is that it's an area that was created, or at least has something to do with Discord, because of it being sort of so unruly compared to other places in Equestria.
Yeah. Because it's kind of it's in the Everfree Forest. The castle is.
Well, not only that, but I'm remembering back. If you actually read the Journal of the Two Sisters, the tie-in book to this, basically the thing is that Celestia and Luna essentially built this castle pretty much more or less as a giant funhouse for themselves, and a lot of the amusement stuff actually was designed and built by Luna herself.
Mm-hmm.
And if Celestia basically had anything to do with it, then she probably just went to town on building on her sister's contraptions, such as one of the secret passages triggered by the organ to the outside is located directly on specifically Luna's throne. I mean,
yeah,
you could just imagine Princess.
So what you're saying is Luna shouldn't be an architect.
I'm saying more like along the lines of like Princess Celestia just trolling her sister.
I think no. Just
imagine Princess Luna sitting on her throne, going about her business, when all of a sudden Celestia just activates the organ to the outside and just tosses her outside.
It's a whole new meaning to window toss.
Yeah.
Thing is, though, nowadays we could have it voice activated, and as soon as I mention Fluttertree or Scooter Chicken, I just go flying out a window.
Well, you'd hear the organ first, and then you'd be launched. Yeah, Twilight, come on, get on it. You need more hidden passages and stuff in your castle.
Yeah, you can have one for every time. No, I have a good one for that. Is every time Spike belches, he just gets flung outside.
Like no, at the at the end of the episode where Spike gets launched by the organ, it'd be the exact same thing, except that would be below his chair in the round table around the map. And so you could just press a button and Spike just goes through the roof.
Actually, I kind of imagine something like the Banjo-Kazooie file screen, where it's like something funny will happen if you like press A at the right time. Like Spike sleeping in his bed, and all of a sudden the bed launches up, tosses him out the window. Spike's Spike making lunch or something at the stove, and all of a sudden the entire wall revolves around, tosses him outside. Spike's sitting in a giant love seat, reading a book, and then all of a sudden gigantic spring launches up from below, launches him through the roof.
To be fair, the only way, if Spike wants to do a get you back at Twilight, all he has to do is rig every single book in the library, and whenever she takes one out, it just like collapses on her or something.
Well, it was more than just that, Draconis Media. It wasn't that it was so much barriers, that the castle was pretty much destroyed after the battle, because we saw that in the flashback in the previous episode. The castle was pretty much getting destroyed between the battle between Celestia and Nightmare Moon. So it was kind of in its current state because of that. That's why the roof's missing in some places, walls falling apart.
Well, not only that, but it's also provided a reason for why Celestia decided to move to Canterlot rather than stay and actually repair the castle, because that was the castle that not only she built, but it was a castle that she built with Luna, and this was a place that she lived with her sister. And when Luna essentially tore most of it apart and Celestia basically banished her to the moon, Celestia couldn't really stand to stay there anymore because it was just too painful for memories for her. So she wouldn't be able to stand being in that same house. So that was why she moved to Canterlot.
I didn't really have a place to put this next. I couldn't figure out where to put it, but Castle had a lot of weird things in it. I think the weirdest thing was definitely the hallway of the disembodied pony legs. Like, what the fuck was that? Why, Luna? Why?
I hate. You know what, Rain? I hate that we have the same kind of thing. I was actually gonna post in Slack, saying because I was rewatching the episode before the thing, and when I heard that, I was like, "This is a kids show, right?" This, it's like, what?
It comes out of left field, and it's like for no reason. It just has no doesn't pertain to the episode in any other way. It's just here's a hall of disembodied pony legs. Have fun.
Luna is not exactly the best artist, is she? Here, just have some legs just on the floor here. Brilliant. 10 out of 10.
This is what happens when you don't, when you don't look at her moon, in her night. You lose an arm.
Surely you should lose your ass, because then you can't moon anymore. You don't look at your moon, you don't get the ability for you to moon.
No moon. Yeah, but there's a little bit difference between her carriage and disembodied pony legs, which they never specify are real or not. So,
maybe she was just doing it just to freak someone out, like if there was any like really stuffy nobles that was just being completely unreasonable, then like Luna would just take them like on a tour of the castle, and that would be like the first place she'd take them was like the Hall of the Disembodied Pony Legs.
People always want to know what happened to the rest of the alicorns. Well, there you go.
Well, to be fair, Rarity and Fluttershy were essentially in basically a trapdoor dungeon. So yeah, dungeons are actually real in Equestria, and so anyone putting that sample of Lemongrab saying 1,000,000 years dungeon over Celestia is actually kind of semi-accurate.
Let's see. Anything else? Anything else story-wise, writing-wise that anyone has to discuss?
It makes a lot of sense that Rarity would have brought Fluttershy along to help restore the ancient tapestry, seeing as how Fluttershy had a freaky knowledge of sewing. I mean, if you go back to Suited for Success...
But we don't see Fluttershy help her with the sewing, though, at the end.
No, we don't, actually.
So you're making it make more sense than the episode does.
Well, it also helps that Fluttershy can fly, which would be helpful in getting the tapestries down to begin with as well, so...
Here's a better question for you, though. Why did Fluttershy bring Angel with her? Because all he was a pain in the ass.
That's
sure
something I don't have an easy answer for.
I'm sure Angel brought himself.
Yeah, yeah. It was probably a case of Fluttershy didn't want him to come, but Fluttershy wasn't standing her ground with him to make him not go, basically.
Let's see, So we already kind of talked to the relation to the season arc and theme. This both continues the previous episode as well as sets up the whole journal that the main six keep throughout this season, which of course comes into play in the key episodes and is a big part of Twilight kind of realizing how to unlock the box and whatnot in the final episode. So that's kind of all set up here in this episode. So characters and characterization. Any character discussion that anyone wants to dive into? Not really a lot of character development and stuff in this. Like we said before, it kind of plays it safe in terms of characters and just kind of uses them to tell the wacky story. But anything anyone wants to point out?
I've already mentioned the Fluttershy sass, and really, there's not much else new that we really learn about the characters here. But that kind of wasn't really the purpose of the episode, I feel.
I will say this kind of relates to story and characters, and again going back to the disembodied pony legs. I mean, seeing Angel more or less get squashed, and then Fluttershy freaking the fuck out and like sobbing like real life, like she actually thinks Angel died right there. That's pretty dark for this series, especially at this point. And yet, this is also the same series where we've had basically a piano land on top of Twilight, so... But that was played a lot more... Obviously, that was a lot more comedy.
Slapsticky.
Yeah.
But I think it was more the implication of the scene rather than anything else. But some people have said that it's too dark, and I was like, well, considering the tone of the episode in itself being in a scary castle, maybe, but I don't think it was. And to be fair, it was kind of obvious to the audience that Angel was absolutely fine.
Mm.
The thing is, though, most people probably would have been celebrating if he'd have actually got squashed there. Little brat.
Most of the main six probably would. Applejack's the one that squashed him.
Yeah, Applejack should have been, basically made a hero of Ponyville. The scourge of Ponyville is over. Carrots will be safe forever. Though it may have a detrimental effect on the sale of apples now that the carrots are basically no longer being pinched by Angel and his cronies.
I will say in terms of Twilight's role here, where she's kind of the glue. Yeah, I mean, this episode she is, but really, I could see most of the characters kind of being swapped out, and like Twilight being one of the ones freaking out. The whole point of this episode, really, when it comes down to the lesson or moral or whatever, is one of the ones is talking about sort of having an outside point of view. So Twilight has absolutely nothing to do with everything that's going on here, so she can kind of come in as an outsider and say, what the fuck are you guys doing, and stop them and kind of actually start a dialogue to actually solve the problems they're having, rather than everyone just running around like a chicken with their head cut off. and not kind of seeing the bigger picture or realizing it. But I don't think it's not really so much in terms of characterization there, because Twilight is the all-powerful princess leader and she has complete control over her friends. It just happens to be, in the context of the story, she was the outsider. I mean, it could have been Twilight freaking the fuck out and down there and having, Fluttershy coming in and saying, what's going on, on it, or anything like that. You could have exchanged some of those characters, because the point wasn't Twilight's authority, it was more Twilight as being the outsider to the current situation.
Though I think you could definitely see some authority in the way that Twilight acted. Now, that's not to say that that's not a slight against that. I think the problem that they had, and it was always going to be an issue with the beginning of this season, because obviously I wasn't here last week for the first Triple E, and there was a quite, there wasn't as big a gap as between season 4 and 5, but there was a fair gap after season 3 ended and season 4 started, and a lot happened in that period of time where a lot of people were concerned about the direction of the show, and that's not, some of that was not unfounded at all. I mean, giving Twilight wings, we may all joke about it now, but it was a big deal, and it still is a big deal, and I'm sure it was as big a conundrum for the writers as it was for the fans. What they've got to do now that Twilight has ascended to this level. I mean, it's not like it's something that is going to be an easy fit. I mean, what was probably really easy was basically writing her as a character, because basically she was the same as she ever was before, because there was nothing to fix there. Her character was great. It was nothing that was ever needed changing. A lot of people were probably concerned about how that would possibly manifest it, though, with these changes that they had. And in this episode, it didn't really change much at all, because, like you say, yes, she was in a position of being in authority, but it was not necessarily because of her being an alicorn. It was just essentially having more knowledge of what was going on than sort of the other characters.
I mean, I guess you could argue that, but, do we really know, if that was directly related to her magic? In terms of Twilight stopping her friends with her magic, was that, you have to kind of imply that was in relation to her now being an alicorn. I mean, obviously, there's no proof either way there, so she could maybe she could have done that before. Maybe she was already a level 300 unicorn before she was an alicorn and could have done that.
I'm about to say, I mean, we've seen her as a unicorn actually lift up an entire water tower, spill out the water, and then carry it through a barn, fill it completely back up with milk, and then still utilize, while this whole thing is doing, basically utilize wind to create a sort of lullaby through grasses. And this whole time, she's basically able to orchestrate this all at the same time. So,
here's a better question for you. Do you think that someone like Starlight could do such a thing? And I believe that she can. And considering I believe she is a match for Twilight in terms of magic, and she is only a unicorn herself, I think it's definitely possible that Twilight could have done it. It may well have required more effort now compared to her being an alicorn, possibly. But that's kind of difficult to really know.
Did we see Starlight freeze people? I can't
no,
remember.
But I'm just saying in terms of her. I'm just talking about in terms of sheer magical ability and her being just a unicorn and not an alicorn, though.
I'm saying,
as we've sort of seen,
like, I think part of me is thinking that we did, but I mean, I could just be remembering wrong. But regardless, I could definitely see her doing that. Yeah.
We technically did see Starlight freeze Twilight and Spike in a block of ice.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah,
you managed to essentially brainwash 5 ponies at once as well. I mean, surely I would say that requires more magical energy than just freezing 4 ponies.
True.
To be honest, so.
Yeah, like they said, Rated Drag. That might be what I was thinking of. I can't remember. She did so much like in the episodes. Like but I could definitely see her having a freeze someone if she did. Let me put it this way. Could I see Cadence doing that? I'm not sure. And Cadence is an alicorn. But I don't think would be one of her strong suits in terms of magic.
But didn't Cadence start out as a Pegasi?
She did.
Pegasus,
That's true.
even,
Yep.
Yeah. So
if we go by the books, yeah.
I'm wondering. With these alicorns, if they did start any alicorn that started out as, obviously a regular sort of earth pony, unicorn or Pegasus, whether their strength is still in like what they were originally, they are stronger as that, because as we've seen with Twilight, she was struggling to learn to fly initially.
Yeah. I would
still think that Rainbow Dash is probably a stronger flyer than Twilight is.
And I think that's a good point to make, it that Cadence probably, in the same ways that Twilight struggled with flying, Cadence probably struggled with magic. I mean, it's something new to Twilight. Obviously was very talented with magic to begin with. I mean, obviously it's her element. Cadence have no experience, so it's kind of interesting to think about that Cadence would have to kind of start from square one there in terms of magic when she became an alicorn. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, that's kind of my point, Tim. Is that Twilight is more powerful as a unicorn because, with magic, is because she was already a unicorn, and a very powerful unicorn at that, before she was an alicorn at all. She had more, she had more midichlorians in her blood or something. Who knows? Whatever.
Hey, does that mean that if it's like George Lucas, that we're going to go on that's like reanimated or something?
You didn't hear George Lucas's story editor of season 7?
Oh god.
It's gonna finally be the origin story of Celestia and Luna, with done as Obi-Wan and Anakin. It's gonna start out with a really annoying young Luna.
All the haters of her, they're going to basically put Starlight in every episode of season 1.
They're gonna replace Twilight's animation in the opener with Starlight for the entire opener.
I can imagine Cadence upon ascension suddenly gaining the ability to magic kind of more as an instinctual thing. But at the same time, since Cadence was likely an adult already when she became an alicorn, kind of like how Twilight was, her instinctual magic is something that she has to learn how to consciously control. Because it'd be like something that she could be thinking of, and then all of a sudden her horn lights up, and the next thing, the potted plant next to her suddenly bursts out into flames or something.
I also think that any spells related towards love, you probably picked up much quicker than other sort of unicorn spells.
And that would make sense to me, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fair. Getting back to Castlemania, it was nice seeing, like I said, the character pairings were nice. Even if it's something we've seen before, they were played off nice. It was nice seeing kind of the continuation here at this point in the series of Applejack and Rainbow Dash still having that very competitive spirit, like with that whole Iron Pony competition. Here we start off with them, with covered in bees to see who can last longer, and that kind of goes in.
It was the daringest dare that we ever dare, or however Pinky put it.
And of course that of course leads into their whole reason for going to the castle, and also has canon Apple Dash shipping in it in this episode as well. where Rarity, where it was Fluttershy. No, it was Rarity.
You want to say?
No. I mean, when Rarity, I believe it was Rarity, maybe it was Fluttershy, put her arm through the that hole in the wall and kind of put it around Rainbow Dash, and
Yeah, that's another thing that's scary about this episode. This episode had disembodied pony legs and glory holes
in a dungeon. Luna liked to have fun, Matt. But anyway, yeah, I did like the kind of the Applejack and Rainbow Dash and interaction in those scenes, as they constantly both try to not put on, not let the other know that they were actually scared, but of course both of them are sort of terrified of the situation as it evolves.
It's funny that the pony that seemed the least scared, at least initially, was Rarity, which is quite funny.
Yeah, Rarity,
she was more just annoyed that the castle was not letting her do what she wanted to do.
Yeah, she just wanted to do the fucking tapestries, but the castle kept kicking her out. Well, it's funny because out of all the characters throughout the entire episode, I think the ones that seemed the most scared were probably Rainbow Dash and Applejack, who were the ones who were trying to compete for not being scared. Because even Fluttershy throughout the whole thing was more just concerned for Angel. She ran around the castle and ran into the castle after him. She was more focused on finding Angel than having to worry about being scared in the castle for a good portion of the episode, at least.
I think the funniest thing, that's the trollingest thing about the castle, is when they're getting thrown out because of all these things, and then Angel ends up getting a bowl of carrots. Like, where the fuck did they come from?
Those carrots have just been there for 1,000 years.
Yeah, and he looks at them like he's about to eat them. It's like, no, I don't think I would.
They're wax. That's why they look like they held up for all those years.
Yeah, maybe he got a little surprise when he took a bite into them.
We can only hope.
Anything else character-wise that anyone wants to discuss?
I really can't think of anything.
There was quite a bit. Not only was there quite a bit of snark from Fluttershy, there was also a bit of snark from Spike as well. Actually, in this episode, not really a character thing, but just an observation that I noticed from him.
No one likes sarcasm, Spike.
I love sarcasm.
I love that line.
It's almost
Shut
like
the
a
fuck up,
teacher kind
Twilight.
of thing. Twilight, yeah, it's like Twilight's basically speaking like a teacher towards Spike. There, it's kind of funny, but
yeah, I mean, like we said going in, I mean, this episode doesn't really extend characters much farther or do any character building, or very heavy on characterization. It just kind of uses the characters and who they are to put them into the story and give contextualization to the story, but doesn't expand on them really any. There's no real big thing that the characters are learning or doing.
we did learn one very major thing. Pinky likes ringing a bell. We're using her head.
It explains so much.
It tells you everything about her. Oh, and that she can play an organ just like that. Because she's Pinky.
It makes you wonder, like, who, kind of watching the episode and going through the episode, who, if we're going to count, like, the Pony of Shadows as an actual legitimate thing at the end, like, it was actually real there, and maybe it was T-Rex or whatnot, what things during the episode were the Pony of Shadows, and which things, if any, were Pinky? Because we saw the eyes through the picture frame, which I believe were the same colors as Pinky's. So was that Pinky? Was that something or someone else?
Does T-Rex have the same coloured eyes as Pinky is the question. I don't think he does.
No. I don't think it wasn't T-Rex eyes, but I'm pretty sure it was. I'd have to go back and look. I'm pretty sure it was this. I'm pretty sure they were Pinky's, like the same color at least. But it's kind of like going back and through, because we see shadows going through and moving around. It's like, well, what was Pinky and what was this actual Pony of Shadows? See, so we can go ahead. We can go on to the voice acting, I guess, is next. Anything stand out for voice acting in this, or anyone that they want to throw out there?
Oh, go ahead.
Anything from anyone?
I'll let Matt say what he was about to go ahead and go with. I'll just type what I was going to say in the chat.
I was just saying. I wasn't actually going to say anything. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, of the best thing of the voice acting that I have to pretty much say in this entire episode was not so much what was said, but how it was delivered. Would probably have to be that Tabitha has Rarity basically giving out that line of "She's with me."
Yeah.
Like, we had Andrea Libman as Fluttershy, like, kind of screaming at the angel, like right there. Yeah. I actually heard like the Metal Gear Solid theme play in my head, like when she was screaming out her angel's name, like as if you got a game over in that game.
Dun 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 dun. Dun. Angel.
I still think Tara's delivery of the line about sarcasm to Spike was just hilarious as well.
Yeah. No one likes sarcasm, Spike. Let's see. So, can we move on.
Angel actually speaks in this episode as well. He laughs, I believe.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
If that counts as speaking.
Not really, but close.
He makes a noise. It tells you all you need to know that he is an arsehole.
Let's see. So, moving on to the humor. I think my favorite thing, one of my favorite things is definitely at the end when it's revealed that Pinkie Pie is the one playing the organ. It's like, hey, you guys, did you know that I could totally play the organ? Because I didn't. It's like classic Pinkie line there.
Let's say, of course, we've always, not so much the Angel getting crushed. I mean, Fluttershy watching Pile of Rocks getting crushed, thinking Angel was in them was, probably awful. But then Fluttershy trying to dig Angel out only for Applejack to jump on the pile and start trampling it. That's also kind of... that just crosses the line twice right there.
It's dark humor, but it's still kind of funny.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing about this episode is a lot of the humor from it. There is quite a bit of slapstick, but I think most of it is basically from the interactions between sort of each of the pairs of characters that there is in this episode. Particularly, obviously, Rarity and Fluttershy and Applejack and Rainbow Dash. I still think my funniest thing is basically where or anything with Rarity in this episode I thought was hilarious, but I just thought when Rarity was explaining why she was going to the castle and basically Fluttershy basically almost feigning disinterest basically was kind of, or indifference, or basically that's a really good reason, sort of basically in a sarcastic tone really.
No one likes sarcasm, Fluttershy.
God, now I really want to see a sarcastic Spike and Fluttershy team up. That would be quite funny. I'd quite like that. Who can out-snark each other?
I'd watch it.
Rain Shadow mentioned this earlier, but this was an instance of canon Appledash because this was more of a meta reference than anything. But we had Megan McCarthy actually had a live tweet with this episode where it was like she was like tweeting wishful thinking on Rainbow Dash's part in response to Dash telling AJ, "You don't have to put your hoof around me."
I mean, look at that! Look at the smile after she says it. I mean, she's like, "Yeah, I'm okay with this." And then that quickly turns to horror as as Applejack's the other side of the room. Just there's so much great screaming, especially with Applejack and Rainbow Dash throughout this. These really big, horrified faces and top of the lung screams and stuff.
Let's just say the voice actresses got they got their money's worth out of them for this episode.
If they didn't lose their voices. I think another visual gag that I really liked is once all the main six come back together and Twilight calms them all down, and they trying to go find out where the organ's coming from. They all kind of group around and huddle around Twilight, and then when they start moving, all of them move as one flash object around, with Twilight doing all of the walking, and they're all floating, grabbing onto her body, and it just looks so funny. Well, because you see them all do it, and there's a nice beat pause before they start moving as one entity.
It's a mountain of pony.
I'm in.
Just the very fact that, kind of like a typical Scooby-Doo episode, the main six just narrowly missing each other repeatedly, and the fact that they just all keep scaring each other silly in the process just makes it even more humorous.
It's still kind of hilarious that the mystery in this episode was still stronger and more in depth than the whole of Scooby-Doo Moon Monster Madness.
Better mystery than Scooby-Doo Moon Monster Madness.
Then again,
it's the same thing as better love story than Twilight. It's the same thing.
Well, yeah, pretty much. I still can't get over how terrible that fucking movie was, though.
There's zero mystery in it.
I mean, to be fair, you could say that it was kind of obvious that it was Pinky at the end of this episode, and yeah, it's a criticism that you can easily level because obviously she's not there, and this it couldn't really be anyone else really. Well, it could have been, but realistically, probably not. But even so, there was still more suspense there than there ever was in Moon Monster Madness.
I mean, it would have been a bigger surprise if it was anyone else but Pinky.
I'm trying to think who else it could have been.
T-Rex, and that's about it.
Well, at the end of what I would say, by this time, the
main six just walk into the organ room, and T-Rex is there playing the organ. Oh, hey guys, I'm back. Did you know I could play the organ? Because I could. Because I didn't.
The only other character I think by this point in time of the timeline of the series that it could have been is Discord.
Yeah, that's true. It could have been.
We had so many derp eyes this episode. No Derpy herself, actually, but pretty much everyone had some sort of wall-eyed expression at some point in the episode.
Yeah, because there's the one point where Rarity gets tossed out of the castle, and she's yelling at the castle, and it drops a stone on her head and flattens it.
Not only that, but she's saying, of all the castles in Equestria, this is by far the most ungrateful, and that's the castle striking back at her.
Yeah.
just her increasing just Rarity's increasing frustration with the castle's ill-mannered ingratitude to begin with.
Yeah, Twilight's bookgasm again.
And not only that, but she also had an actual wing boner as well.
It's a thing now, Twilight. You gotta get used to it. And of course, at the beginning with Applejack and Rainbow Dash being surrounded by bees, it's like, not the bees. But then they but it's kind of funny after the fact, looking back after the fact, because both of them were in bee suits, which kind of completely negates the point of the competition of being covered in bees if you're in a bee suit. But Pinky's standing there right next to them without a bee suit, so I think Pinky's the most daring pony by default.
Yeah. Not only that,
Pinky's
but like
Pinky.
not only that, but Pinky's also being the scorekeeper for their little competition, and their
Oh,
scorecard
God.
is like completely covered in doodles as well.
all
It's
those
just-
doodles.
She mentioned something about numbers. It's like, and the numbers all add up, and it's like, well, there's no numbers there. So I suppose she's kind of right that they are even because there's no numbers there. So it's 0 each? Question mark.
Don't question Pinky math. It's high. It's very highly technical, and you got to go to school a lot of years to understand.
Is there
It's
a
like-
university degree in it?
Yeah. It's right after differential equations. You get into Pinkamena equations.
The very fact that Pinkie Pie apparently got to ring the school bell because nobody else volunteered to do so.
Oh yeah, that was another good cutaway gag. Yeah, Pinky leaving at the episode. Oh, I'm gonna go. Oh, ring the school bell, and it cut. And later in the episode, where she's at the org, and they reveal that she literally rang the school bell internally.
No. I think that the even better thing about that is that originally at the beginning of the episode, she says that she's got to do it for a week. And then when she goes, and then they said to her she does it for 5 minutes, and they said that's enough.
That's enough.
She goes, yeah, they said it was good enough.
Just imagining how that went down in my head is hilarious. Pinky was severely
Another
disappointed
one
too.
of-
I'm just imagining because this was the school bell, yes.
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 Yeah, so I'm just imagining cheerily going to Pinky, going, right, can you just quickly check the bell's working fine? And she just sits up there for 5 minutes ringing it with her head. And she's just looking at her with, like, slack-jawed going, Pinky, I think that's enough now.
And
Pinky."
the camera keeps cutting back from Pinky ringing the bell back down to the ground, and every time it cuts back, there's more ponies there looking up at her, very confused, just like cheerily, and then Big Mac's there.
More
Then,
of more of the students,
Yeah.
basically, there. In
with these like what the fuck looks on their faces.
In a similar issue, like there was going back to that scene where like Pinky was like walking off saying that she needed to ring the bell. It's a little minor thing, but she shakes her tail with Gummy holding onto it, just clutching onto her tail, and you actually hear Gummy making the sound of the bell too as he's being swung back and forth for like just that like 2 seconds that he's done. If I recall correctly, and I'm gonna have to double check on that, but I distinctly remember that happening, and I could be wrong on that one.
Another line I really really liked was when Rarity and Fluttershy were trapped in that when they fell through the trapdoor and they were trapped in that room down there, and Fluttershy eventually triggers an opening to get out. Rarity says, "You must have activated a secret door," and Fluttershy just quietly says, "Oh, I'm sorry."
Why are you sorry, Fluttershy? Who cares?
Or that actually may not have been when they were in there. That might have. I think
No,
that was
no,
when they
it's
were
when she
messing
was
with the
trying to get the big-
tapestry.
She
Yeah.
was trying to get the big tapestry out.
Yeah.
She ended up going round.
Yeah.
And Rarity sort of just mentioned to her nonchalantly, "Oh, by the way, you moved around," and she was like, "Oh, sorry."
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just like the most ridiculous thing to apologize for.
Spike asking Twilight what the organ of the outside means, and Twilight responds with an absolutely delighted, "I have no idea." Just thinking back to the Meet the Medic thing from Team
But there
Fortress
was
2.
also the thing. There was also the thing where Spike was basically asking what that noise was, and Twilight basically saying, "Oh, it's an old, rickety old castle that's sort of, dilapidated, and of course there's going to be unusual noises." And sort of Spike then later on, Spacey says, when Twilight gets inquisitive about the noises, he basically just throws it back at her, saying, "Oh, just random noises because it's a creepy old castle,
No one likes sarcasm, Spike.
That's basically that was the lesson of this episode.
Yeah.
Sarcasm is not liked by anyone, particularly Twilight.
I really, I mean, the whole climax scene was obviously really hilarious and a lot of stuff going for it, but my favorite part is when it cuts back to Rarity and she was like, I was only trying to preserve ancient art. Just in tears.
And like I said, I mean, Rarity's line of "She's with me after Twilight wonders why Fluttershy's present." I mean, there's just something about that delivery that just perfectly blends Rarity's just stop the crying state, overall frustration, and then just sheer embarrassment with the situation. Still having the tapestry dropped over her just only makes it even better.
What's funny is I actually think Rarity was crying harder than what Fluttershy was at that point.
Speaking of Rarity, there's the part at the beginning where they're first entering the castle, and she says, "It's nothing to sneeze at," and then she sneezes like a really disgusting sneeze, like not even a cute sneeze, like a really disgusting sneeze.
I now imagine if there was a burping competition between the main six, that Rarity would win easily.
I can see that happening too.
I can see that.
With Fluttershy in a close second. I'm sorry.
Rarity and Fluttershy would just totally drink all the other ones out the table.
And I just imagine Rainbow Dash having this little, like, really feminine little tiny burp as well. Rainbow Dash having a burp like that.
She'd be like, it's you.
I almost kind of want to see something like that now officially.
yeah.
Image restoration, totally not just stealing someone's own.
It's called archaeology. Come on, Rarity, it belongs in a museum. Also, another thing was after they all got split up and Applejack kind of is tossed, somersaulted through one of the statues. She kind of gets to the other side and shakes her head really violently and has this like duck sound, like almost like Donald Duck.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
with the apple duck.
This was another Pinky line, but as all of the ponies were discussing how they let their imaginations get the better of it, then Pinky chimes in with, "I always let my imagination run away from me. Then it comes back with cake."
Why do I imagine that Pinky's imagination probably is actually a real life actual thing, so she can actually be in multiple places?
Well, we do see it in the last Equestria Girls movie, and it's pretty much the pyro.
It's just pretty much what everyone was expecting it to be. I love the outtake as well when basically Sunset goes back in for some more.
I need to watch those outtakes again. They were funny. They need to produce some actual like official outtakes for each season, like of the main show too.
Oh god. Why do I imagine one of the outtakes for this episode would just be literally like parts of the set just falling on them because of it being supposed to be a dilapidated castle?
Let's see. Anything else for humor that we missed? Anyone?
Not that I can think of.
Yeah, talking about the last on the last This Week in Pony, when we had the question about what Hasbro should do in the hiatuses. That's what they should do. Come on, release some outtakes with the ponies and little shorts. So move on to the animation and the visuals for the episode. One thing I do want to point out that I didn't notice, and maybe I noticed back when this episode premiered, but I certainly didn't remember until now, was this episode actually had some 3D CGI in it, where the tapestries were waving, like especially when Fluttershy was behind them. Those tapestries were actually, CG assets, 3D assets waving. It wasn't just 2D flash animation. But I can't even remember if I noticed that or not, but I certainly didn't remember it. So, I mean, they did a really good job blending it in with the shadows on it. And speaking, this episode continues something we talked about at length last week about the premiere, and in terms of the lighting, the season 4 lighting that we have here, and just the improved. The animation has obviously improved a lot since the first season, but this season they really started improving the lighting and the After Effects work that they do on the show after it's animated, and it really showed in this one too. Obviously, with all the shadows, it's in a very dark kind of nighttime castle atmosphere, so we get a lot of that shadowing and really good looking lighting on the characters throughout.
Yep, we've never seen better looking disembodied pony legs in any other episode of the show.
At least it wasn't, disembodied third legs or fifth legs.
Josh Haber wrote that down on the script. Megan McCarthy read that script. Other people from Hasbro looked at that script and said, "Yeah, that's fine for a My Little Pony show."
Yeah. Hey, we could make some toys about that. Where's my disembodied pony leg toys?
Yeah,
come on, Hasbro, get on it.
Where's my Luna with a disembodied pony legs toy? I want some.
That should be the next fan series thing. Is disembodied pony legs? Come on, it just
no. It's Princess Luna on a throne made of disembodied pony legs.
No, it would have to be Nightmare Moon. That'd be perfect. Oh
Yeah.
That'd be brilliant.
Our throne after she took over Equestria would be.
Perhaps that's what a throne is made of.
Yeah, like Mr. Ben says, that kind of alicorn statue in there. Actually, it reminds me a lot, in terms of how it looks, of at the end of Rainbow Rocks, when they all kind of join together in that final song, and they have that big alicorn in the sky. It looks almost exactly like that, if I recall correctly. Same kind of face design on it. Yeah, a lot, and like I said earlier, a lot of great, funny, and kind of just frightened faces on all of them throughout the episode, and Rarity getting hit in the head with the stone, and he just makes this really derpy face.
Yeah, like I said, this is also the first time that we've seen some of the main six with like absolute fright and fear in their eyes, since the animators were working with a new animation style as well.
Let's see. And of course, I gotta compliment. Obviously, this is a location that we haven't really visited at length, besides a little bit in the season premiere, or the series premiere, and also in the season premiere this season. But they really had to flesh out the castle and how it looked inside and outside close up. And so definitely a lot of design work went into that, and like all the pony armor and different rooms and tapestries and stuff. It had a nice feeling to it.
They did all that work, all that hard work, and we've never been back to it since.
And that's another reason why I was thinking maybe they're gonna refurbish this castle for Twilight in it. I'm a little surprised they didn't. I will say the that image you linked earlier there, Draconius Media, with Twilight using her spell, that's actually not from the episode. It doesn't have any of that wavy effect on it. That's someone definitely filtered that a lot. It wasn't anything like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I saw it and I sort of think to myself, I don't remember seeing that in the file I looked at.
Yeah, it was just a big kind of pink magical blob that kind of came out of her horn.
You mean she created Pinkie Pie using her magic?
Well, that's actually the real twist. Twilight created all of her friends. They're all in her head.
Oh god. I did read a fan fiction fairly recently where Discord seems to think that Fluttershy is a figment of his imagination to try and keep himself in check. Basically, it's like his conscience speaking to him, basically, in a pony form.
Let's see. Anything else for animation or visuals anyone wants to point out?
I really can't think of anything outside of what I've already said.
Oops. That's not where. I was trying to find a window. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Is it to throw me out of?
Yes. Okay, so moving on then. No songs yet this season. We don't have a song until quite a few episodes in this season. So we'll move on to the score and the backing music here. Trying to go through here. Definitely a lot of kind of tense, scary sort of music, but there's some good stuff in here and notable stuff buried in the episode as well. Let's see, we start off with. I believe this is from the beginning of. Yeah, this is when Twilight gets a letter from Celestia. One thing to note in this for the future is you'll hear the obviously this is before the library was destroyed, so you'll hear the library's motif here, and you'll recognize this because it was used. It's been used in the series a lot of times before for the library, but it was used extensively in the first regular non-two-parter episode of season 5 as well, when Twilight is talking about the library and visiting the destroyed library, because it's used a lot in that episode to represent the library as well. Oops. There we go. See, a lot of the stuff going forward is just kind of, again, it's nothing really terribly substantial, just a lot of kind of horror, tense music. A lot. One of the neater things in here is definitely the organ playing that we hear throughout. So I skipped over a lot of the other tracks beforehand, since they're again just the kind of frightening tracks that to back a lot of what the action that's going on. So I'll just kind of play this one track here, which is the big sort of finale build-up track, which goes through all the characters kind of getting split up and all of them encountering all these different frightening things, and then builds up to the music at during that final climax scene right before Twilight freezes everyone. So you'll hear this go through all the different characters. You hear a lot of this glockenspiel and that kind of ghostly choir, which we hear in future episodes as well, where different scary moments are involved. You hear a little bit of the duck sound in the background there. A lot of echo here in the castle. You can hear all the sound and mixing work that they did for this to kind of have all that reverberation echoes throughout all the different channels. Really fun episode to watch in surround sound. Nearing the climax here. And here's the climax scene. No one likes sarcasm, Spike. Just wait for the stream to catch up here. It's falling really far behind for some reason. Hold on. Okay, it should be. Should be catching up here. So the next one here, which I think is definitely the highlight of the episode, is the whole organ playing that we have Pinkie Pie doing during that final scene after that climax there when they first discover who Pinkie Pie is. Really nice little kind of traditional creepy kind of organ playing, cathedral organ playing here.
Then who's playing that?
We're going to find out.
Starts to get really good at the end here. Adds a little bit of strings as well. And then Piggy just sort of has fun doodling around with the organ here at the end. And finally, it leads us to the last track here when when they're sort of introducing the lesson and the journal of friendship here that will be used throughout the rest of the season. So I have a couple different things here. We hear the magic of friendship motif here. This is kind of season 4 was where it was used the most. It was introduced a few episodes in season 3. It was used extensively in season 4. So here we're kind of getting aboard that train here to start using that. So we hear that at the end here when they're talking about the journal, as well as a few other cues in this last track here. Starts out with this nice little glockenspiel piece here, and with some and harpsichord. And this might be the first use of this, like, more the really simple version here. We kind of go to one of the ending themes here. This is usually one of the Applejack or Apple Family lesson themes. And Applejack is pretty much giving the lesson here, so it must be why they used it. I believe we heard this one last in season 3's One Bad Apple. We gotta end with the stinger. And that was one of the things that I think it was this season, I remember, where every episode at the beginning of the season ended with some like cliffhanger stinger at the end, like between the box, and then here in this episode we had that Pony of Shadows thing at the end. Next episode, I forget what we had. I just remember there was a string of like 4 or 5 episodes at the beginning of the season that had all had these like ending stingers to them that didn't really go anywhere. But that was the stinger for that. So that's all the score for this episode. Again, not a lot. There's just a lot of stuff that really isn't really worth mentioning because it's just kind of that kind of tense, scary music that's backing most of the action for it. Be a little different next week when we talk about Daring Don't, which has a lot of great music in it, a lot of great score in it. So we'll have a lot more to talk about then for that. Moving on to the theme and the moral. What does everyone think about the theme and the moral about the episode?
The moral is no one likes sarcasm.
Come on, Spike. Yeah, the Technotron, the ending to Power Ponies was another one. I think it was one of the last ones that had that kind of weird stinger ending that, ooh, is something more going to come with us? Probably not. Yeah, pretty much. The moral about this, there's a lot of different things about, they say it pretty plainly in the episode, but it's also kind of, someone with an outside perspective on a situation, on a chaotic situation, might have a better solution or view of said situation if they're not involved in that chaos. What was Applejack? What was the other one? There was one that Applejack pretty much gives like one of the other morals verbatim at the end of the episode. There, I believe it was about. Not letting your mind get the best of you or something like that, About, so a lot of times stuff is all in your head about being scared. So, favorite parts of the episode and any concerns about the episode?
Like I said, one of my favorite parts was basically just Rarity. Ju- Rarity was just, yeah. Really can't say much of anything else, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, really, it was definitely doesn't really do stuff much to push the series forward. I mean, there's not really any character development or anything like that, but the episode was really good about using those characters for this story. Definitely showed Haber had a really good grasp of the characters. I really just enjoyed the humor in it. Was really good. I love a good I love a good slapstick episode. That's definitely why Applebuck season is still one of my favorite episodes of the show, just because it had such great slapstick and just visual and situational comedy in it. And so this one's a lot like that in that regard, and I like that aspect of it. I did like how they, a little bit different kind of storytelling in the episode, again with them telling kind of multiple stories all taking place at the same time from different points of view, and all interacting with each other and coming together in the end, rather than just focusing on one or two characters straight through an episode. So it was a little different, and I like that they kind of tried that different.
My favourite part was the disembodied pony legs.
No one likes sarcasm, Matt.
No, seriously, it was my favourite part, honestly.
Oh gosh.
My favourite part was every part that had Fluttershy in it.
Well, that was my least favorite part. That's my only concern was Fluttershy was in this episode. Why couldn't
I hate all the bits of Applejack in. They were terrible.
Why couldn't the pillar fall on Fluttershy instead of Angel? Come on, show. I'll forgive it though, because it was Haber's first episode. Oh gosh. So, what was everyone's overall feelings and conclusions for Castlemania?
Even more Medusa heads, but other than that, it was one of the better episodes, I think, especially early season 4. But then again, Power Ponies needed a Megazord. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, no, it's not the best episode, but I think it was, for Josh Haber's first episode on the show. I mean, he understood the characters well. He gave an enjoyable episode doing them, even if it doesn't do anything to really push the series of the characters forward. Even if it might not be the most memorable episode of the season, I think it was a good first episode. It definitely showed them throwing a lot more continuity at him to work his way into the episode, both coming back from the previous episode and then also setting up the journal and setting up a whole bunch of other stuff, maybe even setting up Tyrek for it. So again, just a little foreshadowing to Haber eventually being story editor for the show this past season. And that's the problem. If an episode, it definitely seems to be some people that if something isn't some sort of critical masterpiece, that it's not worth anything, or it's at the very least it deserves to be like bashed. I mean, like an episode can have problems. An episode may not be the best episode, but that doesn't mean you have to like be angry at the episode just because of those things.
Oh, there are plenty of season 4 episodes to come where we'll be having that issue far stronger than this episode.
It was Haber foreshadowing, yeah. So, any other final thoughts before we conclude here? A little bit
I
short.
like pie.
A little bit shorter of an episode, not as much to discuss in episodes like this where there's a lot of visual comedy and pretty light on the story and characters.
Angel Bunny needs to be made into rabbit stew.
Well, with that, thank you all so much for joining us for the second episode here, or technically third episode, but second episode of our season 4 episode Flashback. Next week, we'll be back again at 5 p.m. here on Tuesday, Eastern Standard Time, to talk about the next season 4 episode, which will be Daring Don't, which we'll have a lot to talk about. I'll leave a lot more than we did this week with that for obvious reasons. So there's a lot going on in that episode, and a lot to
Daring Do Not Steal
to pick apart. Yeah. So yeah, we'll be back for that next week for that. And of course, don't forget another thing just on the topic of other shows we have going on here this weekend. CinemaQuestria is back. Again, we're doing that kind of every other week thing with that. So we are back this week. If you didn't see the announcement, we are going to be riffing The Amazing Bulk, which if you haven't seen, you're lucky. And I'd recommend not.
It makes the Asylum look good.
I would recommend not looking up anything relating to it, so you can go into it just kind of cold and have a nice, pleasant surprise about what we're going to be watching.
I've seen the trailer for it, and I feel like I want my life back. I want those 2 minutes of my life back.
So that'll be this weekend, I believe, at 1:45, right, Matt? I think it was 1:45.
140-ish. It's after DuckTales. Woo!
That woohoo was more suitable for The Amazing Bulk. DuckTales woohoo.
No, it needs a more Fluttershy style woohoo there.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Well, I think in regards, not to drag this on any longer, but I think in regards to a lot of reaction to this, I think a lot of it was, unfortunately, with the beginning of season 4, was shattered expectations, because a lot of people, after seeing the premiere, and I think most people thought the premiere was pretty good, and you know, especially coming off of the season 3 finale, and picked it up really nicely, and it did a lot. I think a lot of people were going into the season with the box being given away, thinking that this season was going to have some big overarching storyline, and it was going to start to become episodic, where every episode leads into the next episode and the next episode. And so when that started not to happen, I mean, it happened in this episode, but then when it started not to happen after this episode, it was kind of like it went back to more traditional slice of life episodes. I think people got a little discouraged by that. And I was kind of expecting it too, but I wasn't really that discouraged that it didn't happen. But looking back on this season as a whole, I really liked what they did in terms of the key episodes and what they did with this episode, setting everything else up and kind of coming together in the end. I think they did a really good job.
I honestly think that the end of season 3, and obviously with Twilight getting her wings and that was when I think I certainly noticed in this fandom that there was a hell of a lot more of a more vocal minority of really negative Nancys, and really there was a lot. It's I think it's even worse. It's as bad now as it ever was, and instead of all the hate being basically pumped onto you know Alicorn Twilight, it's all pumped onto Starlight Glimmer. It's just, I just find it sad and pathetic that people just can't seem to go through life without just basically being constantly. I could not go through a day where I am constantly negative from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. I just, how is that a life? How is that an existence? I just,
It's taking that it's taking that frustration that you have and like putting it on other people pretty much.
Don't fuck them, because that would imply that you want them to get laid.
Well, anyway, thank you so much for joining us for Tripoli, everyone, and we will see you next week for Daring Don't, another controversial episode. But we'll have a lot of fun, a lot of stuff to talk about that next week. So we'll see you then, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Later, y'all.
Later, folks.